Hi, Shelly.
Hi. How's it going?
Good, you?
Good. So we finished the rest.
The egg has hatched.
The egg has hatched. I only have a bird.
Pretty good. Pretty decent
Yeah.
bird. Together
Yeah.
we have a story of covers.
Yeah, we do have a story. Are we avoiding it because we don't want to get into the book?
Yeah. So, what do you think happened, Shelly?
I don't know.
Okay, well, from the part where we left off, he eventually meets like another person that he interacts with, right? Theologically wise, where they're really jibing with their spiritual practices in different ways, which was an interesting dynamic because it like inverts the relationship that he had with Demian at that age. It made me think of
that's true.
him when he was younger meeting Demian.
Right.
And his, so I wondered if it was like a reflection on how Demian actually felt about him, which was more antagonistic than I thought, even though he feels bad about it. He's like,
right.
I'm feeling, or he's like, I'm treating this person pretty poorly and I wish I wasn't, but I am. I'm like, okay, well, fair enough, I guess.
Yeah. We're like, you can't change your actions, you know.
Yeah, well, one would think you could just stop.
Right. Yeah. I'm more thinking about the fall. I know that like they did switch positions and Sinclair got to be like the Demian figure, but I was more thinking about when he runs into Demian again. That's sort of where everything for me. So he runs into Demian again and finally meets Demian's mom, of which he sort of makes her almost like a spiritual being and connects with others over theology.
Yeah, it seems like they both, for whatever reason, idolize her. And through that interrogation, basically like examine themselves. And in order for them to unlock a relationship with her, it's an internal thing and she'll just know it essentially when they put in the work. She'll be there.
Right.
So yeah, it was not what I expected. Was you? Did you expect it?
No, I didn't think Demian would even show up again. And I thought perhaps he would just be this figment that like this figure that lived in his childhood that sort of showed him a different way of looking at things, and that forever sort of created a duality in him that lived on to the end of time. And that's where I thought it was kind of going, and that he would find peace within himself. But instead, it went somewhere very different. Yeah. We see Demian again. We meet his mom. And then I was just so like, I don't know if I got lost or I just didn't know what to make of it.
And then the war intercedes afterwards as well. Just when he sort of feels like he's on the cusp of this enlightenment, the war intercedes and Demian again recedes into the background. And basically it seems like it abstracts a whole bunch of time in which he's partaking in the war and is like he's going through a similar spiritual struggle, but a different framing for it, in that he's like having to be in a brotherly bond with all of these people similar to Demian, but instead the dynamic is they're sort of reveling in the chaos and the destruction of mankind itself as well, and their own brothers by extension. And then after that
it just didn't end. I mean,
it just didn't end. No snap. And then once again, after that sort of journey concludes, he finds Demian again. They come together, and he essentially births his second self or his brother is what he refers to it as. And then that's how it concludes. Oh, and I forgot to mention too that when they met Demian and the mother and he enters their home, there's the same symbol, like glyph or whatever.
Oh, that's right.
And his painting is there, which he sort of revels in, right? And it goes back to like, I'm emerging from the egg idea. Yeah. And that's what he tries to do. So yeah, okay. So what did you think it was about, basically?
No, I'm just kidding. No, I feel like it was about a bunch of different things. I feel like it was the philosophizing of a bunch of different ideas, and I saw a lot of connections to religion and like what is a god and like goodness. And I felt like this was a book of ideas, but it like didn't have a lot of concrete there's not a lot of to grab onto as far as like concrete details. So I felt like I was just like exploring one idea after the other. But a lot of it has to do with like the self and the way that we connect with ourselves and the way that we connect with others. But that seems too simple because it was like about so much. What do you think it was about?
Okay, I have a theory.
Okay.
I'm putting down my book.
Oh,
I'm
no.
sitting up.
Oh, no.
So, okay, I think generally that all of this is an abstraction for his interiority, his selfhood. And, well, the spiritual journey that he is on, I think the only concrete details we ever get is his location. Like, I believe that when he's in the pub and he's sort of becoming the common man and not becoming enlightened and spending the time, I believe that sort of happened to him. And I believe that the concrete event that it begins with in the forest, that may have happened. He was like bullied and then all that kind of stuff happened. But everything else where it abstracts things and doesn't put in concrete detail, I think is him completely making a metaphor out of absolutely everything for an internal spiritual journey. And so in that way, I don't even think Demian exists in the concrete sense. I think he is an abstraction of enlightenment, which he strives for, because Abraxas is a god that merges duality. It doesn't acknowledge masculine and feminine. It is something that transcends that. And so I think that's sort of what happens in the end. He merges with his masculine and feminine selves and has a creation event, basically. But throughout it, I think that he's constantly striving for an abstraction of some kind of enlightenment, which is representative of Demian, and that's why he's sometimes insight and sometimes not. And when he's told about Abraxas, I think that probably the character that does that is like some kind of androgynous fellow, like somebody who's merged like him, but then reminds him of his former self so much that he projects that sort of self-hatred. And so in that way, when the dynamic is inverted, just at the beginning with Demian was his sort of mentor but jerk person, he becomes that for the other person, who is essentially another abstraction for his selfhood as well, like his inner child or whatever that he's chastising. And so I think it's all an allegorical metaphor for his actual changing in the end. And so much, if not any of this, actually happened, basically,
Yeah.
And so that's the only way I could kind of reckon with the whole idea of Demian and the mother having a pseudo-sexual relationship thing happening and him striving for it. And also the idea that when he was ready for the Frau, she would simply show up and they would merge. And so even the sexual dynamics would be only in the sense of a different kind of congress, like a mental, spiritual awakening thing. But in the end, he didn't even need the feminine, and that's why he birthed a brother, and not something sort of sexless or something like that. I think that's why it's a brother, and I think that's why it's almost like a chilling end, almost like the way it's kind of like unsettling, like birthing a doppelganger, rather than an enlightenment thing, which is disconcerting, because if Demian is enlightenment and he did merge with it, then it's sort of like a non-outcome to me or something, where it's just like, it's good that he let his former self go, but also what has he become? And I guess that's where the tension of the story is, for like, that's the question.
Yeah. I mean, I don't know, I guess I saw it differently, although I can see that I do wonder how much of Demian is real and how much of his mother is real and how much the art is even sort of real, because he is like creating these images where he sees himself and sees the mother and sees Demian. But I saw a lot of it as like, I still saw a lot of it as like a metaphor for growing up and like the struggles of like innocence and not. But yeah, that would make sense because I was like, I don't really understand why the mom is there, at all. Like I don't really, except for the fact that she seems almost like this umbrella figure, because a lot of people connect to her in different ways. But then she was also like very much, I don't know, she just seemed very much like a goddess figure, and that she birthed like the Max Damian, who is referred to as Demian, which is like a reference to demon, and that he is like showing the different ways that you can live or think about life, to Sinclair. So he's like tempting, but it's still like he's still under like his mother almost, and that mother is like a more powerful and knowing person. But it would make sense if all this was like in his head or something. So I was like, there's this mother and she shows up, and I don't, or like rather like, Sinclair shows up at the mother's house and they have like a connection, but only sometimes.
Yeah, I think of Demian and the mother as like a Janus mask kind of thing. Like, and so here will be an esoteric millennial parallel here. You probably haven't seen I Heart Huckabees?
No.
So in that, it is a similar spiritual journey. But it's absurdist and funny, basically. But it begins with like nihilism. Like it's a philosophical movement in which people like teach or like go for like these self-help dudes that essentially, if you know what they represent, are like nihilism, and then it goes into another school of thought. And the idea is that they complement each other, and you can't have a well-rounded sort of philosophical education without them. And that's how I sort of felt about this book, where it sort of picks up on nihilism, and he's like, my darker self has arrived.
Yeah, because Demian introduced that to him, was like his darker self. He started to see like the Bible in a different way, and
exactly.
Wait, then keep going. Keep going.
And then as he grows up, it is definitely, I think, a coming of age thing. And I think it roughly would parallel his coming of age manhood type journey. Like I think that he did go to war, and I think he did go to that school, and I think he was bullied. But then absolutely. The conflicts were abstractions for the spiritual journey, and he didn't care at all about solidifying any concrete detail.
No, it's like that, and I think that's what this book is. It's like a coming of age spiritual journey of like philosophy, and so a lot of it is very abstract, or that's how it read.
And so where do you land? Like, do you actually like it though, or how do you feel about it?
This is what I learned.
Okay.
I don't really enjoy books that philosophize too much, because I feel like it's not that I'm not interested. It's just I don't know if I don't have the structure in order to like follow. Or to me, it was just like, oh, there's an idea that you're exploring, and then you're moving on to another idea that you are exploring. And I would have liked to see like more of an actual plot point, so that we can experience the scenes with the character in the way that the character experienced them, and then process them with the character, even if it is philosophizing, but it gives you more of like what the context is and why it was so big. I feel like we were just sort of dropped in the moment where he's really just talking about his spiritual journey, and I would have loved to like be like, this is the tree, like this is the tree that I saw, and this is what my school looked like. And I know that that's not what this book is, now, but I'm not mad that I read it. I just realized that I'm like, oh, if something is like seriously philosophy leaning, I may sort of like scoot out or tap out or something, because I'm just like, I don't know. I just didn't love like this sort of cerebral, almost like shiftless feeling of reading it.
Yeah, I liked it a lot because it was able to trick me, which is 90% sure most readers wouldn't react that way. I was like, good job, man. I didn't see where that was going. This was weird. It made me think. And
I'm like, it was weird. why?
Yeah. And then the more I thought about it, it was more fun for me to like put the puzzle pieces together and make a through line of like a thesis sort of thing. But at the same time, I recognize that generally a book should be providing that.
Right,
And it
right.
shouldn't be my work that's doing in it, but for some reason that it tickles me. I
But
like
like
it.
I have moments like that with other books where I am like the pleasure is exemplified because I'm getting all the little references and the connections, and I'm really enjoying that. And so that's why I'm like wondering if I don't know as much about philosophy, or I can't see those structures. And so like I'm just like, oh, okay, he's having a really hard time.
Little buddy.
And I'm just like, oh, come on, you don't have to think about life like that.
I would maybe mark it as like psychological philosophical surrealism, basically. Something like that.
Right. And if I saw those 3 words on a book, I wouldn't pick it up.
Yeah. Well, I mean that's fair though, right? Like it kind of, I think a book should kind of purport to tell the reader what the heck it's doing. And I do like that from the get-go, the expectations sort of weren't there, rather than it being explicit and then being like, haha, I'm so smart. Nope.
Oh, right.
But at the same time, it's a specific reader that's going to like this book.
And I think that more people are probably more interested in philosophy than I am. And so I think that perhaps more readers would just enjoy sort of sitting in that space, because I know, Hesse is German, and there was like a huge philosophical German movement, sort of surrounding this time period. And so I wouldn't be surprised that if when and if people love it, I was just like, it's very it's very abstract. We're talking about a painting, we're talking about a mother. Who is Demian? Is Demian even real? We know who Demian is.
And like it's just I feel like something culturally opaque is in that, where it's like I'm fairly certain from what I know about Nietzsche, this is like there's something going on with Nietzsche in this, and then I think that there's a psychological component that's also culturally opaque to me, that are sort of mirrored there. That would be the metaphor for the actual Abraxas, as opposed to me extrapolating what
Abraxas is,
from the like Gnostic god, versus probably culturally in German, I'm assuming it's going to be something hyper specific that would telegraph it to the reader. So I think it's to a certain extent, it's got to be a cultural thing. And that makes sense, I think, because when I skimmed the Thomas Mann intro, the only thing that I remember seeing when I skated through it was, this is a very German book, or something like that, it said.
So I shouldn't feel bad for not getting it.
I don't think so. I mean, I
liked it. I liked it. I liked the idea of telling a story about like your spiritual journey in sort of abstraction through a coming of age like lens. I just thought that in execution, I was like, oh, I think I would have loved something to like whet my appetite. I mean, whet my imagination a little bit more, like just get it kind of who he is and what he looks like. And we get like everything is just sort of like a blur.
I think this would have paid a lot more like dividends to a certain audience. And I would have, it was kind of frustrating for me, not like kind of being on the peripheral, being like, oh, I kind of know a little bit about Nietzsche, and this is definitely something to do with that. I kind of know a little bit about Abraxas, something to do with that. And then
I'm just like,
and that's like the 3, like the pyramid structure of this book is like, this is the pillar on which it rests. And I'm like, I can kind of see it. Looks cool.
And for me, I'm like, I don't know who that is, and I didn't get the book. Is it me? Like, no.
Me personally, I really enjoyed the book. And I think, like I said, it would be a very specific reader that will get the most out of this, and other readers, I think, will be frustrated by it, but I definitely am glad that I read it and read it with you, and I am very glad that you had me on your channel.
Oh yeah, well, yeah. Thank you for coming. This has been great. This has been a lot of fun for me, at least. I'm getting a lot out of it. Yeah, I wouldn't say that it's not worth the read, but just know that like Demian going in is very philosophically heavy text, and so buckle up for that. But anyhow, yeah, that's it, right?
Right. See you next time.
See you next time.
Bye.
Bye.